Okay, guys, so I don't have access to my office at the moment. So you're seeing me in kind of street clothes and in my kitchen, which is also where I play video games. So I am at a desk. I'm going to read this last portion of the apology, which is for, I want to say for our portion of the class, and for our class, this is going to be the most relevant section of the apology, right? If this were an ethics class, then this part is important, but that notion of a divine command theory is, I think, better laid out in this first part that we read. If you're using this book, as per the syllabus, okay, we're going to be reading page 172 to 178, so pretty short. Now, while this is short, you guys need to, or I want you guys to, understand the gravity of what's going to be said in this last section. And that what's said in this last section is going to contain the philosophical attitude of, how do I say this without saying too much, but without saying too little? The attitude presented in this text is going to be the attitude that creates Western civilization. Okay? It's a product of what's been brewing already in Greece. And it is this romantic relationship we somehow build with truth and knowledge and a love of wisdom, right? Remember that philosophy, or to be a philosopher, is to be a lover of wisdom. This is going to lay down the bedrock for all of Western Civ, right? Or most of what's to come from Western Civ, right? Western Civ's got a very long history, lots of moving parts, right? So it's not fair to just say, oh yeah, right, it's all Socrates or it's all Aristotle, although lots of people do, right? Not just philosophers either, but lots of scientists do as well, and you guys will see why for the science portion after the midterm. If you don't already start getting a grasp of it now, but the major part to focus in on, there's so much here, there's so much meat. This is going to be the most romantic text the most romantic reading we have in this class. Yeah. I noticed last reading was like 20 whole pages and this one's like 6, right? And that's because I really want us to appreciate how radical this last portion is. Yeah, and it is radical. And so all right, let's dive in. So starting right here, let's see here, right at the bottom. Okay, so he's been found guilty. Yeah. There are many reasons, men of Athens, why I'm not resentful at this outcome, that you voted to convict me. And this outcome wasn't unexpected by me. I'm much more surprised at the number of votes cast on each side. I did not think that the decision would be by so few votes, but by a great many. Yet now it seems that if a mere 30 votes, right? So that should tell you how big these court hearings are in ancient Athens. Yeah. If a mere 30 votes had been cast differently, I'd have been acquitted. Or rather, it seems to me that where Miletus is concerned, I would have been acquitted even as things stand. And not merely acquitted. On the contrary, one thing at least is clear to everyone. If Anytus had not come forward with lichen to accuse me, Miletus would have been fined $1,000, right? Since it wouldn't have received a fifth of the votes, right? So if you bear false witness in court against someone else, you're going to pay a pretty hefty fine, right? But Miletus had some pretty reputable friends with him. yeah, to persuade the vote, right? But remember, the vote wasn't cast clearly, right? You guys heard Socrates' apology for himself, right? Socrates clearly showed that Miletus is full of trash, right? But it didn't matter to most of the people there. But be that as it may, the man demands death penalty for me. Well then, what counter penalty should I now propose to you, men of Athens, right? So Miletus is demanded for the death penalty now that he's found guilty. And now it's Socrates' job to sort of address what sort of penalty he thinks is correct, right? So what does he deserve? What do I deserve to suffer or pay just because I didn't mind my own business throughout my life? Because I didn't care about the things most people care about: making money, managing an estate, or being a general, a popular leader, or holding some other political office, or joining the cabals and factions that exist in a city, that come to exist in a city. But I thought myself too honest, in truth, to engage in these things and survive. Because I didn't engage in things if engaging in them was going to benefit neither you nor myself, but instead went to each of you privately and tried to perform what I claim is the greatest benefaction. That was what I did. I tried to persuade each of you to care first not about any of his possessions, but about himself and how he'll become the best and wisest, and not primarily about the city's possessions, but about the city itself, and to care about all other things in the same way. Right? So remember this last half of the apology before this. He's explaining that he could have done a lot of things, but he thought it better to actually fulfill God's commandment of showing Athens that it actually doesn't know. Yeah, I mean, that there's no man that's wise, right? He was on this divine mission to humble Athens for Athens' benefit, and now he's going to be killed for it. Yeah, so what does he think he deserves? Okay. What then do I deserve to suffer for being such a man? Something good, men of Athens, if I'm indeed to propose a penalty that I truly deserve. Yes, and the sort of good thing, too, that would be appropriate for me. What, then, is appropriate for a good man who is a public benefactor and needs to have the leisure to exhort you? Nothing could be more appropriate, men of Athens, than for such a man to be given free meals in the Prytaneum. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Think of it like the Colosseum, right? Much more for him, any rate, than anyone who has ever won victory at Olympia. So, and even, right, he deserves it more than anyone who's been in the Olympics, whether with a single horse or a pair or a team of four. You see, he makes you think, talking about the athlete, you see, he makes you think you're happy, whereas I make you actually happy. Besides, he doesn't need to be sustained in that way, but I do need it. Remember, he's poor. So if justice demands, I must propose a penalty I deserve. That's the penalty I propose. Free meals, basically in the penthouse of a Colosseum. Yeah. Now, perhaps when I say this, you may think I'm speaking in a quite willful manner, just as when I talk to you about the appeals of piety and supplications. That's not so, men of Athens. Rather, it's something like this. I'm convinced that I never intentionally do injustice to any man. I can't get you to share my conviction because we've talked together a short time. I say this because if you had a law, as other men in fact do, so in other cities, right? Not to try a capital charge in a single day, but over several, I think you I think you'd have been convinced. I think you'd be convinced. But as things stand, it's not so easy to clear myself of huge slanders in a short time. Since I'm convinced that I've done injustice to no one, however, I'm certainly not likely to do myself injustice, to announce that I deserve something bad, or to propose a penalty of that sort for myself. Why should I do that? In order to not suffer what Miletus proposes as a penalty for me? When I say that I don't know whether it's a good or a bad thing. As an alternative to that, am I then to choose one of the things I know very well to be bad and propose it? Imprisonment, for example. And why should I live in prison, enslaved to the regularly appointed officers? The 11. All right, a fine with imprisonment until I pay, but in my case, the effect would be precisely the one I just now described, since I haven't had the means to pay you. Well then, should I propose exile? Perhaps that's what you'd propose for me, but I'd certainly have to have an excessive love of life, men of Athens, to be so irrational as to do that. I see that you, my fellow citizens, weren't unable to tolerate my discourses and discussions, but came to find them so burdensome and odious that you are now seeking to get rid of them. Isn't it likely then that I'll interfere, that others will find that I'm sorry guys. Is it likely then that I'll infer that others will find them easy to bear? Far from it, men of Athens. It would be a fine life for me, indeed, a man of my age, to go into exile and spend his life exchanging one city for another, because he's always being expelled. You see, I well know that wherever I go, the young will come to me to hear me speaking, just as they do here, and if I drive them away, they will themselves persuade their elders to expel me. Whereas if I don't drive them away, their fathers and relatives will expel me because of these same young people. Now perhaps someone may say, but by keeping quiet and minding your own business, Socrates, wouldn't it be possible for you to live in exile for us? This is the very hardest point on which to convince some of you. You see, if I say that, okay, this is a very important paragraph. This is the first time I'm reading this version of this text, actually, or at least this first time since I was a student and I used this book. So let me try to read this slower than I've been reading. This is the very hardest point on which to convince some of you. So why doesn't he just shut up and not talk to anybody, right? Okay. You see, if I say that to do that would be to disobey the God, and that is why I can't mind my own business, you wouldn't believe me, since you'll suppose I'm being ironical. But again, if I say it's the greatest good for a man to discuss virtue every day, and the other things you've heard me discussing and examining myself and others about, on the grounds that the unexamined life isn't worth living for a human being, you'll believe me even less when I say that. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Okay, so why can't he just STFU? Yeah. Why can't he just shut the flip up? Right? You see, I'm going to read this again. If I say that to do that would be to disobey God, and that this is why I can't mind my own business, you won't believe me, since you'll suppose I'm being ironical. But again, If I say it's the greatest good for a man to discuss virtue every day and the other things you've heard me discussing and examining myself, so think of the youth of Frotak, examining myself and others about on the grounds that the unexamined life isn't worth living. An unexamined life isn't worth living. You'll believe me even less when I say that. But in fact, things are just as I claim them to be, men of Athens, though it isn't easy to convince you of them. At the same time, I'm not accustomed to thinking I deserve anything bad. If I had the means, I'd have proposed a fine of as much as I could afford to pay, since that would have done me no harm at all. But as things stand, I don't have them. Unless you want me to propose as much as in fact I'm able to pay, perhaps I could pay you about, right, a tiny bit of a mina of silver, right, so a little bit of money. So I propose a fine of that amount. One moment, men of Athens, Plato here and Crito, and right, his buddies, right, are urging me to pay 30 minas, as saying that they themselves will guarantee it. I propose a fine of that amount. Therefore, these men's will be sufficient. They're going to guarantee the money, right? So why can't he shut up, right? Because if you were to stop thinking about these things, if you were to stop discussing about what it means to be a good person, and the other things that he associates that are associated with being a good person, right? About having good character, that he would be disobeying God himself. Yeah. So he can't. Yeah. He can't shut up. Yeah. All right. So, right. He kind of sounded like a smartass, and yeah, he gets sentenced to death. All right. So this next section. Okay. For the sake, hold on, how much longer is this read? Okay. Not too far left. For the sake of a little time, men of Athens, you're going to earn from those who wish to denigrate our city both the reputation and the blame for having killed Socrates, that wise man. Man, I'm really not a fan of this translation. Yeah. Yeah. So Athens, you're gonna look really stupid for having killed Socrates. For those who wish to reproach you, of course, claim that I'm wise, even though I'm not. In any case, if you'd have waited a short time, this would have happened on its own accord. You, of course, see my age. You see that I'm already far along in life and close to death. I'm saying this not to all of you, but to those who voted for the death penalty. And to those same people, I also say this. Okay, pay attention to this part, all right, and reflect on our last discussion. Okay. So for everyone who voted to kill him, this is what he's going to leave them with, right, before he's killed. Perhaps you imagine, gentlemen, that I was convicted for a lack of sort of arguments I could have used to convince you. If I'd thought I should do or say anything to escape the penalty, far from it. I have been convicted for a lack, not of arguments, however, but of bold-faced shamelessness, and for being unwilling to say the sort of things to you you'd have been most pleased to hear, with me weeping and wailing and doing and saying many other things I claim are unworthy of me, but that are the very sorts of things you're used to hearing from everyone else. So if he was, right, so you guys, if you got little babies around you, right, kids, right, turn the volume off for a second. If not, hear me out. If he says, if Socrates was killed, Socrates thinks that he was killed for not being a bitch, right? For not crying and begging for his life like the courts would have asked. This is why he's been put to death. Yeah? Okay. He thinks that these are unworthy of him, right? No, I don't. No, I didn't think then that I should do anything servile because of the danger I faced, and so I don't regret it now that I defended myself as I did. He has no regrets for not begging for his life. I'd rather die after such a defense than live like that. You see, whether in a trial or in war, so pay very close attention to this. You see, whether in a trial or in a war, neither I nor anyone else should contrive to escape death at all cost. In battle, too, it often becomes clear that one might escape death by throwing down one's weapon and turning into a supplicate one's pursuers, right? And in each sort of danger, there are many other ways one can contrive to escape death if one is shameless enough to do or say anything. The difficult thing, gentlemen, isn't escaping death. Escaping villainy is much more difficult, since it runs faster than death. And now I, slow and as old as I am, have been overtaken by the slower runner, while my accusers, clever and sharp-witted as they are, have been overtaken by the faster one, vice. Vice is the opposite of virtue. Yeah. And now I take my leave, convicted by you of capital crime, whereas they stand forever convicted by the truth of wickedness and injustice. And just as I accept my penalty, so must they. Perhaps things had to turn out this way, and I suppose it's good they have. Right? This translation is not as powerful as the one from MIT. I'll go back and read a little bit of that after I'm done with this. Okay. Next, I want to make a prophecy to those who have convicted me. Right. Okay, so let me actually back up and give this last paragraph a second of time. Right. Let me actually look this up. I'm going to finish reading. I'm going to finish reading from, let me see here, classics.mit.edu/Plato/the apology .html, right? So it's yellow, screen's yellow. So it looks like this. I'm going to finish reading. I'm going to reread this last paragraph, okay? I know I'm running up. Oh, I mean, it's only 20 minutes, right? Here we go. Here we go. And now, O men who have condemned me, I would fain prophesy to you. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, so I'm going to actually go back even. Not much time will be gained, O Athenians, in return for the evil name which you will get from the detractors of the city, who will say that you killed Socrates, a wise man, for they will call me wise even though I am not wise when they want to reproach you. If you had waited a little while, your desire would have been fulfilled in the course of nature. For I am far advanced in years, as you may perceive, and not far from death. I'm speaking now only to those who have condemned me to death. And I have another thing to say to them. You think I was convicted through deficiency of words? I mean, that if I had thought fit to leave nothing undone, nothing unsaid, I might have gained an acquittal. Not so. The deficiency which led to my conviction was not of words, certainly not. But I had not the boldness, nor imprudence, nor inclination to address you as you would have liked me to address you, weeping and wailing and lamenting, and saying and doing many things which you have been accustomed to hear from others, and which, as I say, are unworthy of me. But I thought I ought not to do anything common or mean in the hour of danger, nor do I now repent of the manner of my defense, and I would rather have died. I would rather die, have spoken after my manner, than speak in your manner and live. For neither in war nor yet at law ought any man use every way of escaping death. There we go. Now that's the powerful translation for this. For neither in war nor at law ought any man use every way of escaping death. Yeah. This is the ultimate dying as like a real one kind of line. Yeah. For often in battle there is no doubt that if a man throw away his arms and fall on his knees before his pursuers, he may escape death. And in other dangers, there are other ways of escaping death if a man is willing to say and do anything. The difficulty, my friends, is not in avoiding death, right? Death is easy, but in avoiding unrighteousness, for that runs faster than death. Right. I am old and move slowly, and the slower runner has overtaken me, and my accusers are keen and quick, and the faster runner who is unrighteous has overtaken them. And now I depart hence condemned by you to suffer the penalty of death, and they too go their ways condemned by the truth to suffer the penalty of villainy and wrong. I must abide by my award. He calls it an award. Let them abide by theirs. I suppose that these things may be regarded as fated, and I think that they are well. Okay, I like this reading much more. Maybe it's just because I'm more familiar, but I think this captures that more radical tone to it. And now, O men who have condemned me, I feign prophecy to you. For I'm about to die, and that is the hour in which men are gifted with prophetic power. And I prophesy to you who are my murderers, that immediately after my death, punishment far heavier than you have inflicted on me will surely await you. Me you have killed because you wanted to escape the accuser and not to give account of your lives. But that will not be as you suppose, far otherwise. For I say that there will be more accusers of you than there are now, accusers whom hitherto I have restrained. Right, so his little young group of dudes who follow him around and laugh as he shows that people are kind of stupid, he's been holding them back. But get ready, right? Get ready. They're about to come for them. They're about to be pissed, and they're going to ruin their reputation. All right, this entire thing is inspired by reputation. Yeah, by reputation, not by reality. Think about Euthyphro. Okay, it was almost unanimous in our last discussion that you guys thought that Euthyphro, that it's better to be more like Socrates and humble than it is to feel like Euthyphro or to look like Euthyphro and actually think you know something and you don't, right? Well, this is why he's killed, because he's exposed this sort of thing. Yeah. So, right. Me you have killed because you wanted to escape the accuser and not give an account of your lives. But this will not be as you suppose, for otherwise, for I say that there will be more accusers than of you than there are now, accusers whom hitherto I have restrained. And as they are younger, they will be more severe with you, and you will be more offended at them. Now, here's some more heavy stuff. For if you think that by killing men you can avoid the accuser censoring your lives, you are mistaken. That is not a way to escape which is either possible or honorable. The easiest and noblest way is not to be crushing others, but to be improving yourselves. This is the prophecy which I uttered before my departure to the judges who have condemned me. Okay. And man, I mean, to be this kind of person, it 100%, it's so relatable to when someone says something that you don't agree with and you can't respond to. It's so easy to, instead of saying, well, you're wrong because of X, Y, and Z, or, oh man, you give me a lot to think about, maybe I'm wrong. It's easier to sort of point names and talk trash, right? It's easier to do that than to become humbled and pursue reality. So friends who have acquitted me, I would like also to talk with you about these things which have happened, while the magistrates are busy and before I go to the place at which I must die. Stay then a while, for we may as well talk with one another while there is time. You are my friends, and I should like to show you the meaning of this event which has happened to me. Oh, my judges. So think back to this sort of oracle coming up here, right? Remember, he's on this divine mission from the oracle to humble Athens for Athens' good. Yeah. Oh, my judges, for you I may truly call judges. I should like to tell you of a wonderful circumstance. Hitherto, the familiar oracle within me has constantly been in habit of opposing me, even about trifles, if I was going to make a slip or an error about anything. And now, as I see, there has come upon me that which may be thought and is generally believed to be the last and worst evil. Right, so now he's about to be put to death, right? And this is viewed as the most evil, right? But the oracle has made no sign of opposition, either as I was leaving my house and going out in the morning, or when I was going up into this court, or while I was speaking at anything which I was going to say, and yet I have often been stopped in the middle of a speech, right? So the oracle's often stopped him, right, when something bad's going to happen. But now in nothing I either said or did touching this matter, the oracle has opposed me. What do I take to be the explanation of this? I will tell you. I regard this as a proof that what has happened to me is a good. So this is good. And those of us who think that death is an evil are in error. This is a great proof to me of what I'm saying, for the customary sign would surely have opposed me had I been going to evil and not of good. Right? So if this wasn't good, the oracle would have stopped him. Right. Okay. Let us reflect in another way, and we shall see that there's great reason to hope that death is a good for one of two things. Okay, so why could death be good? Either death is a state of nothingness and utter unconsciousness, or, as men say, there is a change and a migration of the soul from this world to another. Okay, one of those two things. Now, if you suppose that there is no consciousness, but a sleep like the sleep of him who is undisturbed even by the sleight of dreams, death will be an unspeakable gain. For if a person were to select the night in which his sleep was undisturbed even by dreams, and were to compare this with this the other days and nights of his life, then he would tell us how many days and nights he had passed in the course of his life better and more pleasantly this one. I think that any man I will not say a private man, but even the great king will not find many nights or days or nights when compared to the others, right? So I read that kind of messed up, but no worries. Um, yeah, so if it's utter unconsciousness, if when we die nothing happens at all, right, then it's going to be like an eternity of the best sort of sleep you could ever have, a sleep where there's no dreams. Yeah, it's just pure peace. All right. Um, Here we go. Now, if death is like this, I say that to die is gain. For eternity, then, is only a single night. But if death is the journey is a journey to another place, and there, as men say, all the dead are, what good, O my friends and judges, can be greater than this? If indeed, when the pilgrim arrives in the world below, he is delivered from the professors of justice in this world, and finds the true judges, who are said to give judgment there, Minos and yeah, I'm not even going to try this, right? So R and A and Tripolomius and the other sons of God who are righteous in their own life, that the pilgrim would be worth making. What would not a man give if he might converse with Orpheus or Masuus or Hesiod and Homer? Nay, if this is true, let me die again and again. I too shall have a wonderful interest in a place where I can converse with both Palamedes and Ajax, the son of Thelamon, and the other heroes of old who have suffered death through an unjust judgment. And there will be no small pleasure, I think, in comparing my own sufferings with theirs. Above all, I shall be able to continue my search into true and false knowledge. As in this world, so also in that. I find out who is wise, and who pretends to be wise, and who is not. What would not a man give, O judges, to be able to examine the leader of the great Trojan expedition, O Odysseus, or Sisyphus, or a numberless of other, men and women too? What infinite delight would there be in conversing with them and asking them questions? For in that world they do not put a man to death for this. Certainly not. For besides being happier in that world than this, they will be immortal, if what is said is true. So death is either nothingness, or it's a pilgrimage of the soul from this world to another place. Yeah. Okay. Whereas, O judges, be of good cheer about death, and know this of a truth, that no evil can happen to a good man. Okay. I'm going to read that again. Wherefore, O judges, be of good cheer about death, and know this of a truth, that no evil can happen to a good man, either in life or after death. He and his are not neglected by the gods, nor has my own approaching end happened by mere chance. I see clearly that to die and be released was better for me, and therefore the oracle gave no sign, for which reason also I am not angry with my accusers or my condemners. They have done me no harm, although neither of them meant to do me any good, and for this I may gently blame them. Okay, lots of heavy stuff there. Still, I have a favor to ask of them. Okay, so here comes this ultra radical part, right? This Western Civ part, right? This devotion to the truth, this devotion to reality, right? This putting, and think of our last discussion, this putting the truth before the way you feel, right? All right, here it is, just this short little last paragraph. Still, I have a favor to ask of them. When my sons are grown up, I would ask you, O my friends, to punish them. And I would have you trouble them as I have troubled you. If they seem to care about riches or anything more than about virtue, or if they pretend to be something when they are really nothing, then reprove them as I have reproved you, for not caring about that which they ought to care, and thinking that they are something when they are really nothing. And if you do this, I and my sons will have received justice at your hands. I'll read this one more time. Still, I have a favor to ask of them. When my sons are grown up, I would ask of you, O my friends, to punish them. And I would have you trouble them as I have troubled you. If they seem to care about riches or anything more than about virtue, or if they pretend to be something when they are really nothing, then reprove them as I have reproved you, for not caring about that which they ought to care, and thinking that they are something when when in reality they are nothing. And if you do this, I and my sons will have received justice at your hands. This is what justice looks like to Socrates. The hour of my departure will go our ways, I to die and you to live. Which is better, God only knows. Yeah. Okay. Lots of stuff to dissect. I don't want to dissect it too much before our discussion and before our assignment. Yeah. So, yeah, okay. I'll just pause it there. All right.